So let me go through a number of different, a few scenes here. What I wanted to show you, the very first scene starts out with a painting. I apologize. It's a little bit on the, it's not super, doesn't have a high rendition to it. But what I wanted to show in this particular painting, this is the end result, and I'm going to show a series of different slides that talk about this particular painting. This painting, I'm going to say probably 99.9% of my on-location paintings just derive from one vantage point. I look around at the scene, I search all around different vantage points of the scene, of the idea that I want to paint, and I finally come up with one vantage point that I usually will do the whole painting right there. This particular scene was really unique. I saw this scene from far away. It was an interesting, small little waterfall, as you can see here. Here's the waterfall coming down. What you can't see is that I hiked up right to the bottom of this waterfall. You can see there's still snow in the area. This is in Crested Butte, Colorado. In the middle of summertime, but you're high up in the alpine areas where the snow hasn't completely all melted yet. And excuse me, above and beyond, whoops, let me get the right tool here. Above, let me get this. Above and beyond this, oh gosh, I thought I had this ready. Above and beyond this ridge, if you went over this ridge, you can see another mountain. You can't see it here, but on the when I started to walk up to this scene, or I should say, to begin with, I saw this scene from afar, and I liked this little trickle of water coming down, and it got up to it, and it was a pretty good size amount of water. It's kind of hard sometimes to tell from a photograph how large something is. Sometimes photographs are very deceiving, but what I'll do is I'll kind of show you. The progression. Here's my block in. I block in sometimes very not always the same, but here I use almost kind of a watercolor wash, if you will, of part of the elements, and then I will start to work more with opaque values. Excuse me, I take a drink. And the next scene is a close-up of some of the paint quality. You can see some areas of the canvas haven't even been covered. There's a little stain there, but these are more obvious opaque areas. I'm starting to develop hard edges and soft edges of some of the waterfall that I was developing in this case. And here's pretty much the close-up area of the waterfall that I wanted to portray, and I stopped at this point. And then what I did is I backed up. I backed up about 200 yards. That revealed this top portion that I couldn't see from the first location that it was down in front of it. When I was down in front of it, I was looking up at that waterfall, almost not straight up, but on a pretty good angle, and I couldn't even see this mountain back. But I wanted that mountain to be part of the scene. And I looked at it from back at this location first, like where I'm finishing the mountain, and the waterfall was too small. I wanted it larger, kind of in your face, and then having the mountain sit back. So I had to do this in two different vantage points, coming up first to paint the waterfall close up, then backing up about 200 yards, setting up again, and painting the rest of the scene up above. And that's what you're seeing here. Here is pretty much the finished scene, and here is the mountain in the back. Here, again, if I went up about 200 yards up below here, I was looking too much straight up, and I could not see this mountain in the back. And so that's kind of what I was looking for. I wanted something close up. I'm not sure if I got exactly what I was hoping for. But it's one of those things where you take your chances. Now, here's the other thing I wanted to point out. Look at the various colors, and it's relatively close to the scene itself. I don't have a different sky in. I have relatively the same kind of sky, and the greens and so forth, and I have some of these trees that were further up into the mountain further. What I probably should have done is put a tree closer up to give the sense that you were real close before you would have to go back further in the scene. But what I try to do is I try to get values and colors and patterns and masses against things that are more textural and more small, or more defined in a small sense. Let me go back to that. But that kind of gives you an idea sometimes what an artist can do instead of just making the painting from one particular location. So I'll probably say what I wish I would have done is maybe having, and I could, let me go back to this scene here. What I might have, maybe what would have been better, and not sure where I would have put it, but I'm just going to try something real quick here. And because I haven't done anything. This painting was from 10 years ago, this trip that I was on. But what I would maybe do is create, if I could create a pine tree that might be up close, and sometimes you want to make the pine tree look a little rusted. If there was a pine tree up close, maybe a little smaller one behind here, I'm going to say maybe there's a little bit of a smaller one going back here. Maybe I'd find another one that would be, let me find a little bit grayer color. What I probably should have done is created an idea of that this is really close up, and then you'd be, if you got over this edge, you'd go further back and you would start to see trees a little bit further away from you. And so I'm just trying to play around with this to get an idea of what I might have done. I'm not sure if this is all working, but that might have solved the problem or solved the issue of being able to look up and then think of going over, getting and walking and finally getting up here and all the way to the top of the mountain. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that I'm always thinking about movement and direction, and that some of this stuff was planned, it just didn't happen accidentally. This little wedge of snow is pointing down here. It doesn't connect exactly, but it comes up to here, goes up to here. So you kind of have a connection. The location of where the shadow and light is, where does that go? You can see a shadow cast from a cloud. You can see clouds in the sky. This is kind of shadowed here. It doesn't have a whole lot of sunlight on it here. A little bit more light here, but more light back up in here. I wanted this whole area to be more shadowed. So you can see a little bit of a cast shadow from a cloud right in here on that part of the hill, and then this is all sunlit. You can kind of see where the end of that shadow is in the sunlight, and that comes right down here, and that comes right to there, here, right to here. So there's a natural movement and direction. These angles can take you up. This angle without the trees, I mean, even the trees were there, it would help to stop the viewer from going off. That brings you back down around here. And you get to where the focal point, in this case, is a little bit more almost up in this area right in here. This dark against the light area here, and some of this becomes more the focal point. Sometimes my plein air studies don't have all the information that is needed, and I'd have to dig this out and find it. I just never got around to redoing this. I feel to capture that sense of what I wanted. Let me see if I can jump back at a few scenes here. Let's see if if I wanted to get that sense of this looking up this stream, I might have been better off working with a vertical scene. Oops, let's see. Let's wait until I get this good. Let's see if I worked with a vertical scene that would have included, let's say if the vertical scene would be something like this, where this cliff or this edge of the cliff up here would be up here, and this stream would probably continue to come way down here. So this whole area was much more than the lit area, where there's more light coming from. So that's probably, after looking at this after 10 years, I would look at it and probably decide to do a different kind of composition. At the time, this worked out for me, but I don't feel I really got that height that I'm looking at, that I happen to be, more underneath that scene. Where's that shot? Yeah, more underneath that scene like this. So anyways, these are some of the complications that happen when you're doing a plein air piece. But here's here again. This is the final location where I finished the piece. Let's take a look at some other works. Here's I just want to show you a few other paintings from that same trip. Finding a wonderful grove of cottonwoods that I liked, and this was wasn't completely finished off, but it was close to being finished. And so you can kind of see my setup. You can see my mixing, all my paint. I put a lot of white out on this side here, so I use a lot of white. And then I have my colors going across. I'm going across here and have my brown down in here. I had some color mixed from another painting that I scraped off and scraped out the palette and just added down in here that sometimes I'll use in the next painting session. And I've got my brushes off to the side, and I have some more brushes over here, and I've got, what you can't see is right here, I have my container of mineral spirits for washing and cleaning my brushes. Here you can see that setup. Here's my brushes. Here you can see this is an attachment I have for an umbrella, and this was a wonderful scene of an old farmstead, and you can see I made the hillside. It wasn't quite that steep. I made it much more steep in my painting. I like that angle. I like this angle. I picked a little bit of a different angle up here, this and this, and then I got the mountain in the background, and then I got some interesting cloud shapes in the sky, and that became the scene. And obviously the roof line of the buildings became these interesting geometric shapes along with the front of the building, the side of the building. They became the geometric shapes within all this organic shapes. That's what I was really interested in. There were a few, I'm not sure if it's, yeah, it kind of shows up here. There were just a few, you can see right here. There's a few violet flowers. There's little violet, and I added more of that. It's hard to see, but I added a little bit more of the violet flowers that were growing. You can see some here, a little bit maybe there, of some that I just added a little bit more of that. But that is some of the ways that I look to create a little bit more interest, is that I'm painting here again, you can look at the scene and see relatively the values look good. I did make this a little darker. I think at the time it was maybe a little bit of sunlight on there. On this, I chose to paint this one. It was definitely in shadow, sunlight back here, and a little bit more light in the foreground at that time. So that same trip, I went out in the evening. I had some of my night gear with me and did a stream. This is photographed the next day, but I didn't take any shots at night when I was working. I was pretty much feverishly trying to capture the moonlight and coming up over the stream bed with a mountain in the distance and some of the pine trees in the foreground. So I'm trying to take advantage of every opportunity I can when I used to do some of these plein air events. This was at a ranch that had an interesting, the whole property was really interesting, but I walked around until I found this old truck. It looked like it might have been abandoned for a while. I'm not sure if it was still used, but I love the patterns of all shadow and then some light light here, obviously shadows going across the truck and on the ground, and shadows over here, shadow of the tree, and then the light hitting on the truck and other places. So it was a light and shadow effect that I looked at, and I walked around until I could find a good vantage point that gave me this kind of almost an abstract angles and interesting shapes, organic shapes against more geometric shapes, and great light effects with shadow and light. That's what I spend a lot of time on before I just plunk my gear and start painting a truck with the background. I got to find just the right location for it, and having fun painting some of the edges and so forth. And I love the bright blue color. You can see the blue in sunlight has a much more turquoise look, and the blue in shadow has much more of a ultramarine, or a little bit more of a cobalt look to it. Shadow, 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 sunlight, sunlight. You can see some places where the sunlight's much stronger. Sunlight was coming from this direction, from left to right. You can tell by the shadow, light over here. That's hence why that rounded edge is getting more sunlight than the top edge, which is getting ambient light and sunlight. That's why that edge right there is brighter, and maybe a little bit of that edge is brighter. Anything that was more direct to the sun angle was slightly brighter, and when it leveled off and became still in sunlight, but having more effect of the ambient light, it became just a little bit cooler, in a sense, okay? A little bit, maybe just the value shifted a little bit. It's another scene. You're trying to figure out what to paint. Sometimes just some old round hay bales stacked up, and looking for some wonderful subtle color, the gray colors. And there's things that sometimes I get in when I'm painting plein air that get a little awkward. I have to clean up areas like this. There's a chunk of yellow. I'm not sure where that came from. I probably cleaned that up. And then there's times when I don't quite get all the canvas covered, and I will come back, and just so those don't look awkward, I may come in and finesse a tree, or maybe this is the way the trees were, and I might say, well, maybe I need that tree just a little bit taller. Those things I may do later on. Those are all design decisions, but I did want to have these bales kind of right up front, running off, and then being able to look past and see a mountain side in the back, or a big hillside. Interesting colors in the foreground, getting more muted as things get further back up into the scene. A little bit more air perspective as it goes back in. Let's see what other, there's another little, also I think this was I'm not sure if it was an 8 by 10, small, I remember it was a smaller format, but there was a creek running through here, and I was kind of, wanted to paint the creek, but yet there was something about this hillside with all these wild flowers growing on it that I was attracted to, and a little bit of the sunlight and shadow effect, and the large stand of pines. This one helps to balance all this over here a little bit, and the darks over here help to balance that on that side. Same with this being slightly darker. So all these things one has to sometimes manage in the field. I will already make these decisions. I wanted to crop the trees off here, have an opening to get back to this, leave areas to get back around and move through, and but yet I need to make sure I have good balance. That's something I learned very early on in my art school days, about good composition and balance, and I still try to make that work with all my pieces. This is me painting in Switzerland on a wonderful waterfall, and it was so loud here, but it was a neat, I actually had it, you can't see, but there was a small walkway that I'm standing on. Or actually, I went off the walkway. I remember I was standing on some rocks just off the walkway. My tripod bottom's actually in the water, but I wanted to get this vantage point, and plus there was a small walkway that people were walking, other tourists were walking back and forth. I didn't have enough of a location to set up on that walkway. I would have impeded their travel through, and I would have been moving my stuff back and forth. So I just went off the walkway, stepped on, stood on a couple of rocks that were above the water, and tried to capture this fall. This waterfall. This waterfall was I believe it was a double or triple waterfall. That this was the bottom of it, and then it went up. It came to here, and then there was another waterfall, I think, that went up another location. And this here, I think, was some of the steam from that location. The first one, I think it was a 3-tier waterfall. It was a huge waterfall, and beautiful location. Switzerland is just filled with a lot of, because it's right in the midst of the Swiss Alps, and so because of the high cliffs and the mountains, you just have numerous waterfalls all over the region that are very, very paintable subjects. And so let's go to waiting for my computer to open up this next shot here. There we go. Here's from years ago. This was a workshop out in Colorado. And I chose this one because you can't quite see it, but on this particular post shot box, you can see what I wrote with a black Niji. You can see the Q-U-I-N-T. Can't quite see the T with the exclamation mark, but squint. I have to remind myself to do that often. So here I am doing a demo for a group, and just found the back area of a building. You can see the building here, and that's what I have right here. You can see this building in the background. I made it a little bit more steep. Instead of it being shallow, I made it more steep, and then a steep roof line. And then you have some of the wood pile in the back, and the shadow that was probably there earlier in the morning. There was a long shadow cast across the front. Or maybe I even introduced that. Sometimes I'll just say, look, there's too much light in here. I need to introduce a shadow. And I forget on that particular one if it was there earlier that I placed in, or if it might have been probably behind this building, because I can see the sun's coming from left to right. I can see the cast shadow on that roof line, and this is in shadow. And so maybe the shadow that was coming off this building that you can't see behind here, I just made more of that and made a shadow in the whole foreground area, but made for an interesting painting. And I'm working in this one you can see I'm working in a square format. So I'll bring these different formats with me to paint to. This was a couple years ago in Glacier National Park. I was painting with another artist, another friend, and we were painting. I had a scene just to the left of me that didn't work out. I scraped it. And I turned around and went, so maybe I'll just try painting this. The clouds came up, and it was an overcast day, no sunlight, but I liked the patterns of the aspens against the pine trees. So here again, what I wanted to point out is look at what I try to do is I try to match values as much as I possibly can, change them where I feel I need to, but that is important. That's why I'm stressed so much that you have to look back and forth at your scenes, at your various elements that you're painting, and try to get the color, the value, the shape proper. Don't just put a sky in that's not the same right color, or you just put a green in because you don't want to work a little bit harder at trying to get the right green. Mix it until you get it right. Here you can see the same palette that I work in all the time. This is my white, cad lemon yellow, cad yellow, raw sienna, alizarin crimson, permanent rose, my ultramarine blue, and my black. I don't even think I put a brown out, because I can mix a brown with the alizarin crimson and yellow and black. I can mix the browns if I really want a brown. But I sometimes use it a lot. That's why I do have it on my palette. But I think I have some other pictures of this same scene. There's another one, a little close up, and not sure why some of these are taking their time and loading. And here's another scene that I came across. that I like. The clouds kept on coming back and forth on this mountain. Mountain's got this wonderful sunlit, and it had an interesting spine to this mountain that came out at me. This spine was coming, if you will, I'd make an arrow. This spine was coming out toward me and then going back here to this until it went up into here and so forth. And it had another little spine going this way here. So I was kind of attracted to that, to trying to paint that coming out at me and the colors and the shapes. And so I started to do a painting of that. I got it to a certain point, and in this area, in Glacier National Park, there's a lot of grizzly bear. And this was in fall. The bears were out with the sows were out with their cubs, and the boars were out. They were all gorging, trying to fill up as much as they could on berries and stuff. And I had just seen some bear, a sow with some cubs not too far from this location before I stopped here. And a couple of times, it was really windy. A couple of times I had people come, I was right off of a game trail. And a couple of times people came behind me, and I quick swung around thinking it might have been a bear. So I got to be a certain point where I wasn't painting as fast as I could have. I didn't get the painting done. The light changed too much. But I got done enough of what I wanted to get that light effect. Getting the idea that, that this is in shadow, that there's some shadow cast across the top of the mountain a little bit, more sunlight, maybe more shadow down here. And I wanted that interesting effect. Of course, I looked to see how I could compose it so that it was more interesting, not right exactly in the middle, but coming up off here and going this way, and then this angle, all these various angles, and then working with edges and so forth. So anyway, that was a fun, challenging, and here's a little bit more of a close-up of it. And I've got one of Brian Mark Taylor's pochade setups. It's a little aluminum setup. I'm trying to think of the name of it. I can't think of it offhand, but it's I got so many different setups that I use. This one I happened to win in some event years ago, and I find it to be a real nice setup to use. Like I say, I don't endorse one particular one, but they're all good. This is an interesting scene. I think I had I took the cap off my head, tried to block the sun out of the lens of the camera. I think I shot this with my iPhone. This is the back of my cap with the loop in the back of the cap, if you will, that's showing up in here. But I like this backlit scene that had a lot of glare on the water. The trees were backlit, and every once in a while the sun would come out and hit on some of these hillsides and had a really interesting sky effect. So I had walked around this whole area for about an hour until I finally settled on this particular scene. And it was really a challenging scene to paint because the light was going back and forth. But here's my initial start in. I mean, I think I was pretty much almost done with it here. And what I did is I always waited until the sun came out and put that big glare here. But at this point, when I took the shot, the sun wasn't out. It got to be too cloudy. The light effect changed. I had some great shadow going across the mountain here, which I'm showing here, and then light effect all in the foreground. I made this tree much taller than what it is. Actually brought that tree to come way up above to break that area of the composition to help stop your eye and to help balance this side. There's a pine tree that, let me get rid of some of these red lines here. There's a pine tree that probably because of the root system is old, it was growing out of this area here. I chose not to paint it because it just looked awkward. What I did is I painted it, but I brought it upright and put it right here and made it what it is right there. Like I said, I think I might have stopped at this point too. Sometimes my studies, I don't get them completely done. As long as I have enough value, shadow, and I can always finish these areas off and resolve it a little bit later. It's more important to get the whole gist of the scene. Here again is a little bit, you see my setup. my paint. These panels can pull off, which is interesting. These pull off and they go in here. They can be put on either side. I think that one painting I had it set up where it was on this side and I had the brushes on that side. So it just depends on how I feel and what I'm doing at the time. But it's a nice little push-shots box. Here, a little bit of closer view. Really trying to get that light flaring here that was coming, occasionally out of the clouds onto the water. And so, anyways, enough of that one. Oh, one more yet. Here's a better light on it, I guess. So you can see this has quite. There's some areas that have quite thick paint to them. Let's see if I can make this a little larger. Here we go. You can see the thin application. You can see the tooth of the canvas showing up. Sometimes that can be very obtrusive and it can be a little annoying, but you can see the thin application, much more thick paint. You can see my lighter values are much more thickly painted. Look how thick this is. I drag that paint down because there was that neat flare of light in the water, those glares. And that's what I wanted to create, that glare on the water. You can see the pine trees are thinner even though they're opaque. And you can see some of my initial block in here. Let's see if I can get back to that. Yeah, you can see I just worked into a white canvas, didn't even stain it. You can see where I sketched with a pencil where the trees were, and then I worked in. I had sketched the whole scene out, so it gave me a blueprint a little bit of where certain elements were going to be masked in, and where certain elements were of a different color family. I need that to help me guide me. It helps me as I'm working along. So it looks like I can't. Oh, there I can. I don't know if I could back up any more than that. Maybe I can't. Looks like I can't. So. One back. Looks like I got a lot of pictures of that particular setup. Oh gosh, how many shots did I get of this? I thought I had enough. But I guess I want to just emphasize, sometimes the setup and what a person can capture, and why it's so important. Why I feel it's so important to paint from life as much as possible. This location is a road here. You can see a car here, but there's a road here. I'm in an area. I'm standing just off of a parking area. There was a big. This road came around and came way around this way. So the road's in back of me. It goes up the mountain, goes way around this way in the mountain. And I had seen this scene the other day, a couple of days prior. And this is real early in the morning where all the sun is coming from left to right. And there's a big mountain to the left here that you can't see. And obviously you see one here, but there's another mountain closer that is casting a shadow across all this here. But there was an area to the side of the mountain that the sun was able to shine. And I kind of figured early in the morning this is going to be a really dramatic scene to get shadow and light effect up in the mountains, and then maybe I'll get some cloud effects down below, which I did here way above the clouds, some clouds hanging into the mountains. So you can see again my sketch. I don't even bother staining it. I wanted to get as much done as quickly as possible. When I first started it, there was still shadow up in here and only light here. And I'm trying to think of how did I resolve that. I have other shots here where it looks like I might have left that. There's a little bit more of a close-up shot of it. Another shot here. You can see my setup again. And there's another shot. I'm not sure if I got one where I finished it off or not. I think I might have one. Yeah, here we go. Here it is. Now you can see where I'm standing. The sunlight is all in this area where it was shadowed before. So this is probably an hour and a half, almost 2 hours later. And this is pretty much the finish of that little 10 by 8 painting. I think it was a 10 by 8. Maybe it's a 912. But it was a small little painting capturing the cloud effects down below, shadow, light, light in the sky, light in the clouds covering up that mountain. Again, a big light area here with all shadow in the foreground and shadow of a big mountain here. A lot of steep angles to this. That's what I wanted to show, that dramatic angles to the mountains, and what gives you the sense of something being straight are how the trees are growing. Trees always grow straight for the most part. Every once in a while you'll have a tree growing like that one did, but for the most part they all grow straight. Those trees are the rhythm and the movement that help the viewer understand that you are looking at steep angles and that this is actually straight up and down, which follow parallel with your verticals on your canvas. So. Okay, let's go to one more here. And here it is after the sun is up higher now. Now all this was in shadow. What I needed to do, turn this so the sun wasn't hitting on this so I could get this photographed properly and get a good shot of some of the scene. Here you can see this is the mountain that you couldn't see that was casting the shadow across the whole scene to begin with. And the light was actually streaming on this side of that mountain, between this mountain and this mountain, there was some light streaming that was giving me this effect here that I so wanted to capture. That scene probably has 75–80% shadow. This is all shadow. That's all shadow. And this is sunlight with some shadow here, a little bit of shadow back there. So probably at least a good 80% of it's in shadow and 20% of it is in sunlight. So it's a nice dramatic way to reveal that drama sometimes of the sun. And of course I wanted to get that sense of that really being up high in the mountains where things are really steep and rugged and, you know, and it is what it is. So those are some of the, those are only a few shots of my years of painting plein air. And but I did want to show you that one shot to begin with that had the double scene or the double vantage point that I had to take. This particular shot was from Maui. I was already pretty much done with doing plein air events, but I did accept an invitation from a friend. It was about 10 years in a row that I was invited to the Maui event out in Hawaii, and I finally just agreed to do it. And at that point, I had already kind of severed myself from doing competition shows, but it was fun to go out there, and did a workshop also while I was there. And this is a scene that somebody came along and I asked them if they could take a few pictures of me painting, and they were nice enough to take my camera and take some shots of me kind of working from like what I was doing, working from life. A lot of wind that day, a lot of surf coming up, hitting on these rocks, and this is my beginning stages. I'm not sure if I think I might have had some pencil lines on here first, just kind of giving me an idea where I was going to start to have dark masses of rocks and so forth. So anyways, that is my monthly deliverable on plein air, where it all begins. And it's great if you can get out and work from life. That is where I learned, I'm going to say probably 75 to 80% of the knowledge that I gained, and then taking that knowledge and continuing exercises and exploring in the studio, where then I can apply it and then even learn more and maybe perfect my composition skills. And that's obviously where I can edit. I will edit outside already, as I showed you in a few cases where I did edit some things. But when I get in the studio and I take that study and I feel it's a good candidate that I can make a larger painting of, that's when I will start to really explore, just like in Module 2, where I suggest the editing and moving, taking things out, putting things in, making more shadow, more light, more, just experimenting and exploring compositional elements, spatial arrangement, and light effects. and trying to create sometimes a slightly more dynamic painting. Some studies are, I feel they don't need any more. I captured what I want, and I'll make a larger painting of it just like it is. But there's many that I have kind of saved and made a better idea out of the initial idea captured on location. So if you can get out there, I know some of you are working from life and you're really enjoying the experience. It is frustrating. I try to talk as much as I can about my process in doing that. Ask questions if you have on it. Like I say, years ago I used to just quick set up and paint, and not until I started to paint with some other people did I, when I took a break and walk around, start to go, gosh, I should have spent more time, and I should have came over to this location because this has got a much better vantage point. I started to learn from my errors and capitalize on some of the things that I was learning from other artists. They spent much more time looking for a much better vantage point to an idea, and their ideas were that much better um, as a visual, as an end visual. So, anyways, take care. Keep those brushes to the canvas. Bye now.
Hi, my name is Kenn Backhaus, and welcome to this online art instructional course. I've been involved in the arts professionally my entire life. I'm a signature member of the Plein Painters of America, master signature member of both the Oil Painters of America and the American Impressionist Society. My works have appeared in many of the national art magazines. I've been included in several books, to name a few: The Art of the National Parks, Sea to Shining Sea, and The Enchanted Isle plein air painting on Catalina Island. I was one of the hosts for two art-related public television series: Plein Air Painting the American Landscape and the art instructional series Passport and Palette. I've been teaching art workshops for over 20 years. Prompted by many students' requests, I created this particular study to studio course. This course is developed for either the indoor or outdoor painter. The translation from a reference study to a larger studio painting has always been a challenging process. In this 4-week course, I define the tools of my trade, my palette, and an important color mixing demonstration. I will take you through the same exact process which has proven to be successful for me in the studio, including various creative options that will improve the results of your studio efforts. My process of teaching is wrapped around the sound and historic foundations and principles that are the guidelines that defines quality art. I feel confident and believe that you will discover this course to be very beneficial to your future artistic development. Tucson Art Academy's online courses is the new way for art educational opportunities. I hope to see and work with you in this new online course.